now let's segue into the lion and mouse, your
Okay.
baby, kind of, so to speak.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Now, can you just kind of, because I know that first we should just make it clear to our viewers that you are not a lawyer.
I'm
So,
not a lawyer.
right. So you don't give legal advice, but now I will let you
All
continue.
right.
Yeah.
The premise of it was coaching, which I always thought coaching was a bit of a wonky name, like kind of a hokey, life coach, give me a break. I
Okay.
was
Yes.
never, I still don't like the term. I just saw a video that Andrew Felsen put out with a parenting coordinator who kind of said the same thing, the kind of fuzzy on the coaching thing. I get it. I don't particularly like it either. But the
Yeah.
fact of the matter is, now that I've been doing it for a while, it is applicable. And while it's still hokey to hear, life coach, divorce coach, what the hell is that? That is a big piece of it
Mm.
because people have a tough time communicating with the ex in a way that isn't going to shoot themselves in the foot. And so a big piece of it is, and the interview that Andrew just did, I think it was yesterday, they talk about that sometimes they're the ones drafting the email for the other side for their client. And there is a lot of that goes on. So some of the coaching is to do with perspective. I'll give you an example. This is the most common thing. People go in thinking that I have a right as a parent to see my child. It should be 50-50. It's that rights-based approach that judges loathe, from what I can see. And some of it, the coaching is, don't think of it that way. Don't think of it as you're trying to get more time with you and the kid. That's not how it is. What you have to argue, depending on if you're the primary or seeking more access, is you're arguing the kid should have either more or less time with the other parent. That's a pretty big, more time with you or less time with the other parent. That's a pretty big ask. You're basically asking to restrict the child's access to a parent.
Mm.
When you put it in that perspective, it's like, okay, so maybe that threshold of proving that that's what's best for the child might not be as easy as I thought. How do you argue you should not see your father, you should not see your mother as much as you do now? I hope you can prove
Mm-hmm.
that or don't bother trying. And then you run into the problem of, okay, I know that's what you say, but they're going to say this, then you have an evidence problem. I mean, who's the judge going to believe? Well,
Right.
that becomes a bigger problem.
Right.
So a lot of the perspective is don't think about what's best for you or what's best for your family. That's not relevant. Nobody cares what's best for you. The only thing that matters is, how does this look through the eyes of a child? Well, I don't want the child to be over at mom's day at mother's house for more than 3 hours of my time. Really? Do you think the child is in agreement with you on that one?
Mm-hmm.
Not only should the child go to mom, but you better have a good present because the child's going to feel like crap when he shows up at mom's house and he's got nothing to give him. Or he's rummaged through his bedroom to find a cheap Pokemon card to give to his mother because he wants something to give to mom. What you're doing is not from the eyes of the child. So that shift of perspective of think about you. Another common thing, I'm going to ramble on here because you said
That's
talk.
okay. Yes, this is good.
The bickering of the other person's a bad parent, the other person does this, the other person does that. It's a perspective shift again. Think of yourself as an 8-year-old and you're on the school playground,
Yeah.
and Billy Joe says your mother is or your father's, whatever.
Yeah.
You get into a fight because you want to defend them. I mean,
Right.
don't talk about my parents. You talk about my parents, you're talking about me. So imagine if you're sitting there at home and dad is bashing mom.
Mm-hmm.
You can't beat up on dad because he's got 150 pounds on you and he's your father.
Mm-hmm.
So what do? You sit there and you internalize and you feel like crap. And you hate the parent that is making you feel like crap. And so when parents are putting that into the materials, not necessarily putting the materials, but are kind of not being nice to the parent in front of the child, that's what you're doing. You're the schoolyard bully now to your child. So think about what you're saying. Your goal is to have the child say to you, why do you defend mom? She never defends you. That's your goal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one that the child is going to gravitate towards for an emotional bond, not the one that bashes the other parent. That never works. So coaching on that perspective, think of what it would feel like if you were this child. Think of what would you'd be thinking if this was happening to you. The
Yeah.
coaching, that's a big part of it. If people are able to make that switch to stop thinking about themselves, which I mean, I do nothing but think about myself. It's really hard to do, but if they're able to do that for a little periods of time when they're dealing with the materials, they're dealing with the X, then it goes a long way. So the coaching piece of it ends up being a big piece, even though I think it's a wonky kind of a term. I don't know a better way of saying it. That's how it is. The other piece, a lot of it is proofreading paperwork, helping them with, you can't say this in your paperwork because maybe it's hearsay. I know it's kind of legal advice. This is what hearsay is. Go read it. You'll see what I'm talking about. You don't say something you can't prove. Don't bash the other parenting materials because this is the optic you're giving. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of proofreading involved. Do I have to get this statement sworn in? Does this get commissioned or do I just sign this? There's a lot of that procedural stuff.
Procedural stuff, yeah.
Yeah, which is, does it have the sworn boxes on the bottom or not? That's the easiest way to tell, really, is get sworn in.
Right.
And some of it is just understanding a bit of the process, what a motion to change means. It's basically a fresh application, but it was a construct to keep everything in the same file for the courts. For family, it's not a new thing. So some of it is understanding the procedural, understanding that trying to litigate your matter through a whole series of interim motions is not what it's meant for. That's trial. Interim motions are just what you have to have happen right now because there's a problem or you need something to get to trial. It's not to litigate your issues. You're not going to get final decision making on any interim motion. So some of it is helping. That's not what a motion is. A motion isn't you just making a wish list. This is what I want. That's not what that's for. This is something else. So there's that piece of guidance a little bit. And the final piece is the most effective I can be on a file is when I have counsel on file with me. And that has a whole new flavor, which opened up a world for me, what goes on. And I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit, see what that looks like. When counsel's on file with me, I always tell people, if you're solo, I can help you out. I'm a resource. You come to me, you say, I need help proofreading this, I need email. That's great. But you're driving your file. You're responsible for your deadlines. I can't act for you. I can't take on that liability. I'm not allowed. You're driving your file. If counsel's on file, they're driving your file. They're going to be the ones saying, hey, I need that case conference brief. Hey, this has to get, they're the ones driving. It's always good to have counsel on file. I mean, there's good and bad counsel. Let's just assume everyone's good. It's always good to have counsel on file. And when that happens, it makes my life a whole lot easier. It makes their life a whole lot easier. And they have representation. I mean, it's the best of both worlds. When that happens, counsel may say, all right, Heather, Dave, we need an updated financial statement and a new case conference brief. You two go do that. I'm going to work on your offer to settle and then send that to me and we'll get those served and filed out with the appearance. And so we can offload a lot of that work. That's some of it. The other half is there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that as a self-rep, you might think there's something fishy going on there. Like, why is opposing counsel and my lawyer talking so much? Why am I not part of those conversations?
Yes.
It happens. And it may look like, oh, they're best buddies. They're colluding against me. I get that all the time.
Yes.
Why are they friends? The fact of the matter is, in every industry, they might have gone to, I've seen opposing counsel, they were high school friends. They went through high school together. It's an industry. You're probably going to know some of the lawyers in your industry. That's just how it's going to be. You've probably sat across from them 100 times if you've been around. To think that your lawyer isn't going to know opposing counsel unless they're fresh is unrealistic. I mean, maybe in a big city like Toronto, okay. But small, I mean, they're going to know each other. I've known them where they would go to a wedding of one of their children because they have that. I've been in industries where you might go to a trade show with your direct competitor across the hall or whatever from you, but then you have drinks with them that night. I mean, there is a camaraderie there. There is an industry, and so people are going to know each other. So there's that piece. Like, don't be put off by the fact that they know each other. They're going to know each other, probably. The other thing that happens is sometimes lawyers will have conversations between them that aren't for the client to hear. This is, I'm not going to get anybody in trouble here, but so it's entirely possible that both counsel may have unreasonable clients, that they're both delusional, that's a strong term, but they both have unrealistic expectations on what they're going to get. Maybe it's a property claim, maybe it's an access issue, whatever. And the lawyers can talk to each other. I've seen it where one lawyer says, yeah, I'm going to get a motion for child support for mom while dad is already moved out and paying for the house in lieu of support. Like he's paying 100% of the house costs. And that lawyer says, well, in addition to that, I want child support as well for my client. And then counsel comes on and counsel talks to him. This is, you're not going to get that. My client's paying housing. Oh, I know I'm not going to get that. Well, then what are we doing? Let's talk it out. And they hash it out.
Right.
Now, mom over there thinks, oh my God, my lawyer just sided with him. That's not what happened. They sided with reality. and it took them coming together to do that.
Yeah.
Or they may have a conversation. I've seen a lawyer say, my client needs to be put in front of a judge. Like, either being unrealistic, it's going to make my job easier. It's going to make my client's life easier when they have a judge tell them you're being unreasonable. And so that happens. Or they say, listen, I had a conversation with opposing counsel. This is what was said. We can't tell the client this. It was without prejudice. It was just between me and them, but that's the context. Can you go talk to the client and do your client management thing and get them on board with reality? I said, okay. Then I go back to the client, and then we have an hour-long conversation about the reality of things without disclosing, without breaching that trust between counsel and what they discussed. So there's some of that backroom stuff, which everyone thinks is, oh, it's collusion, it's corruption. It's not. It's trying to do what's good for you despite your efforts to subvert what they're trying to do for you. That's good counsel.
Right.
There's two types of counsel. You thought you were going to talk during this interview, didn't you? You thought you could ask questions. I'm just going to yammer on. There's two types of counsels: those that serve the firm, those that serve the client. Those that serve the firm will argue everything you put in front of them and not hold back the restraints. Those that serve the client will tell you 8 or 9 times out of 10, don't do that. That's an uphill battle.
Interesting.
I mean, don't do that. And I've been in enough conversations. We've said to the client, are you out of your mind? I'm paraphrasing. Are you out of your mind? You're going to lose this motion. You're going to get hit with costs. You're being completely unreasonable. But then not me, but counsel is in arguing that our client is completely reasonable. The other side is out of their mind. And so people get caught up in the trap of that opposing counsel, they, them, counsel is doing this, counsel is doing that. That's not it. It's the client is doing that, and the counsel is just doing what they have their marching orders. And so a lot of the coaching is stop fighting with opposing counsel. That's not
that is so funny. No,
your
this
fight.
is actually, this is unexpected. This is actually good. And I know exactly what you mean, because maybe I should cut this part out because sure. No, because like in our case, in my case, during trial, I remember sitting there watching my lawyer and the opposing counsel joking around at trial. So this is before the judge came in, and people are just waiting, and they're like chit-chatting, kind of like, and I know how it feels, because it really makes you feel uneasy when you watch.
It makes you feel betrayed. Like, how could you be friends with him? That's the enemy.
Yeah.
I get it, of course. I'd feel the same thing too. But the fact of the matter is, they are not enemies. They are working for their client. And I've seen opposing counsel argue one way about sharing of driving in long distance. And then I've seen case law where opposing counsel was arguing against what they had argued for in a previous case. So they're doing what they're supposed to do. But
their job is the job.
Yeah, it's the job. And it doesn't mean they still can't be friends outside of the job. Sometimes friends have great time debating each other.
That's true. That's right.
And litigation lawyers by nature are competitive. So they can still be competitive and be friends. I'm really competitive with some of my friends. That doesn't diminish my competition level. That might make me want to beat them more. So it's not a bad thing.
That's interesting.
So a lot of it sometimes is, don't fight with opposing counsel. That's not who your fight is with. They're doing what they're told. Don't think, I hear often, well, how could my ex be doing this? Maybe he's not listening. How could opposing counsel be giving my ex this advice to do this when it's clearly wrong? And maybe that clearly is wrong advice. And it's usually, I am willing to bet you a lot of money that opposing counsel told me the exact opposite of what they're doing, and they're just not listening.
Interesting.
You didn't listen to me last week, and look what you did. So, I mean, that happens all the time. The argument isn't with opposing counsel. Only once in all of my files have I seen opposing counsel actually do something that might have warranted the Law Society getting involved. And I usually, when they want to make complaints against opposing counsel, I usually say, don't bother, it's a fool's game. Right. Actually, probably not doing anything wrong. Only once have I seen that. I thought, oh, wait a second, that was a problem. And sure enough, the judge picked up on it. So I always tell people, you don't have to do that. If opposing counsel does something wrong, the judge is going to call it out. The judge is going to know. And the judge, I don't know if they make referrals or not to the Law Society, but don't fight with opposing counsel. That's not who your fight is with.
David, I want to ask you a question, sort of going back to your services. So if a client comes in, then what do they book a consultation with you where they sit with you in the meeting room and they ask you questions?
Yeah, I'll tell you how
Like
that
that kind
works.
of service, like the
Yeah, I'll tell you
consultation?
that works. Usually, so I get about, God, I'm gonna reveal a number here. I get 2 or 3 new clients a week.
Mhm,
So I'm probably at my limit now.
mhm.
Um, coincidentally, most people can't talk during the day. That works for me because I can get other work done during the day because they're at work and they can't talk about
Right,
their next divorce, with
yeah,
coworkers in the next cubicle. So I do a lot of my work in the evenings on weekends. My time
right, that's
completely
good.
packed away.
Mhm,
And it just works out that works for me and that works for them. It's all
mhm.
fantastic. So what usually happens is someone contacts me either through the website or through the group, or a lot of times it's word of mouth now.
Right,
And I say, all right, well, tell you what, let's set up a Zoom chat. Well, I use Google Meets because my accountant uses that, and I just kind of got into that. But
mhm,
let's set up an initial meeting, and we do a
mhm,
vid chat just like what you and I are doing, and
mhm.
then you can tell me about what's going on. And then they
Oh,
tell me what's going on, and this is off the clock. And then after they tell me, I say, okay, well, this is what I've seen before. This is what you should check with your counsel. Do you have counsel? Do you need counsel?
mhm,
This is what you should check out.
right,
And then from there, I say there's 3 ways I can help people. They don't have to be a client, but I can't look at your materials. I can't help you draft materials.
yeah,
There's a liability privacy issue there, but we
right,
can talk very hypothetically, high level. And
right,
I'm happy to do that in between my workload. And you don't
right.
have to be a client, we can do that.
Mhm.
But if you need me to actually read materials, to read emails, or to read previous orders, or to do whatever it is you want me to do, or help you draft correspondence, you have to be a client. And then there's a client agreement that they sign, and it lays out if it sounds like legal advice, it's not legal advice. This is the things I cannot do. These are the things that you have to do for yourself. These are the things I can help with. And once we have that, then I can start doing my thing with you a little bit more hands-on, a little more case specific, and then it goes under the billable time and everything else. I use Divorce Mate just like all the lawyers do.
Mhm.
People may be quick to point out, how did you get Divorce Mate? You're not a lawyer because it's only available to lawyers. I don't know. They gave me a license. But I am quick to say, don't convey superpowers or that I'm like out of suits or something. I'm nothing special. They gave me a license. I think maybe Andrew might have had something to do with it. I don't know. So I help people. I can do the Divorce Mate calculations and do all the forms for
Ah,
them. Because the public forums, if you've seen them, are horrendous. Like the case conference briefs, you hit enter in the wrong spot and it wipes out your whole paragraph. They're just a nightmare. Divorce Mate forms are Word docs. So I put people on Divorce Mate so they can get access to all
ah,
those forms and the computations for the financial statements and all that stuff. So that's one of the things I can do for them as a client. Or they come on with me and counsel. If they have counsel, great. I don't know how well I could work with that counsel. It typically doesn't work out well because they don't know me from a hole in the wall. Who am I?
hmm.
If they need counsel, I usually bring one of Feldstein's groups in, or there's a few other people that I deal with as well as co-counsel. And we go on from there. And then
Mm.
that's how the work flows until they're done.
All right. So
So it
somebody
always
who's
does start with
represented,
initial consult, and then we decide if I'm a right fit for them or not. If they need counsel, whatever.
right? But it's now, but is the initial consult free or is
Oh,
it?
it's free, yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. So just a
I,
finish.
I just can't, if they want me to read materials before the
Oh,
consult,
yeah,
I can't. Like, I
yeah,
won't read your materials and,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I can't do anything like that. But if you just want to talk, hey, this is what's going on in my case,
yeah.
I'll say, oh, yeah, okay, so you've got these issues. Okay, let's talk about those issues a bit without going down the path. Well, I always up front say, I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
This may sound like a legal advice, may quack like legal advice. It is not legal advice. This is just personal experience. So I always have to preface that.
Right. It's gonna,
And
yeah,
then
based
we
based
talk
on your
about
personal
things.
experience. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of personal experience because I can refer it a lot to that.
Right.
This is what high conflict is going to do. I heard
Right.
a judge say once, he always ends up meeting the children of high conflict parents because years later they'll be in front of him for drug or criminal charges.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. So I'm usually push the reduce conflict, reduce conflict. I mean, this is not going to help anybody to a point. I mean, you can't, sometimes there's conflict no matter what. It's not up to you, but quite
Yeah.
often people have somewhat of a hand in their high conflict situation.
You don't do mediation, right? Like yourself, like you do.
No, I don't. There's probably there's probably an accreditation that's needed for that. I've never really looked into it. I've had people want me to go to
Yeah.
hearings as a Mackenzie friend, which
That's what's
I'm
gonna ask
happy
you.
to do. I usually tell
Great.
people, what's that?
That's great because I've had people ask me, oh, they really need Mackenzie friends. They don't know where to go to.
Yeah, I can do that. I usually tell people, you sure you want to spend the money? I mean, I can if you want, I get it. and I can take notes and help you out and
Right.
help calm you down when things go sideways. But
Yeah.
just be sure. I usually try and push people away from spending money.
Yeah.
Most of what I do is trying to, I don't know if this is the right term, to teach them to be a good self-litigant. This is how you do things. The less I can do for them, the better. If they start off with I'm doing a lot for them and it progresses to them barely talking to me, that's the goal. That's kind of what we want to get. Sometimes it's like that. Sometimes there's a dependency that builds there. It all depends on the client.
Now, David, your website, it seems very, of course, family law oriented, but you said that you have some experience yourself in sort of like the corporate side. So can you help people who are self-reps of small claims, for example,
Yeah, I mean,
or
I've done a fair amount of
tribunals?
small claims. I can. People have come to me about that. I've said,
Yeah.
it's been the last time I did a small claims was 5 years ago.
Well,
It was
that's not bad.
doing Chrysler, which doesn't sound like small claims, but okay.
Yeah.
There's been Chrysler, there's been Wonderland, there's been back when remember the 2000 year 2K bug thing?
Oh, yeah.
There was a time clock company that was forcing people to spend $1,500 to do an update for Y2K, and I argue, nope, there's an implied warranty that says I shouldn't be doing that. I shouldn't be paying you for that. So I've done some small claims I've never lost.
No, wait a second. Okay. So you're saying that you're actually the person arguing, the agent or whatever you call
I've
it.
been allowed to.
You've been allowed to be the agent.
I've done tribunals like labor
Wow.
tribunals for not even a company I worked for. It was coincidentally a cousin of a company I worked for back then that got reported on Canley. So it's weird to see my name as being a representative because I'm not a lawyer, but it's there.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
so yeah, if you search my name in Canley, you'll find my one reported case. Yay, I'm famous.
Yes.
I have a lot of my client cases are on there, but my name is never mentioned. It's
Right, because you're the behind
Elsie.
the scenes guy. You're kind of
Yeah,
like the
it's Rachel
support.
Wise or someone is listed as counsel on there.
Yeah.
Rachel Felstein, I share a bunch of files with. So she's it's either Rachel or Kyla or Quinn that I promote. Lauren. There's a handful of ones that we have a good relationship with that we're quite effective with. So those are the ones you'll see on most of the family law things. You're not going to see my name. My name sometimes slips into materials because someone will CC me and the other side, well, who's this Dave Brewster guy? You know, then crap, cat's out of the bag. My name's out there now. I try not to have my name out there.